Oh, look, another day, another national media pundit trying to do something with BYU that would obviously irk some people, but I see this one as actually a badge of honor for the BYU Cougars. Allow me to explain.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day, and more importantly, thank you for all of you being everydayers with us right here on your original daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege and save $20 off your first purchase. Today's show, we're going to talk about BYU being moved in a hypothetical conference realignment scenario. We'll also talk about BYU's 2025 recruiting class being signed, sealed, and delivered yesterday on National Signing Day. And we'll finish up today's show talking about a man by the name of Keneal Sweetwine and what he offers to BYU as a member of the 2026 class recently committed to the Brigham Young University football program. All right, so starting off today's show, Josh Pate obviously does a great job, has a great podcast for 24/7 Sports, and I'll tell you this, Josh loves college football. He eats, breathes, and just lives the sport. I will always give him that credit, but he has put out a new idea of some conference realignment. He's calling them the perfect CFB conferences. He has realigned essentially the Power Four into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, essentially 8 conferences. Now, the whole idea is at max, there would be 10 teams per conference in his mind, allowing for round robin format, obviously with scheduling. You'd play 9 conference games. Now, there is a conference in here that only has 8, so that may offer some interesting situations. But the biggest point to be made here, if you're a BYU fan, is that Josh Pate, in this hypothetical realignment scenario, is sending the BYU Cougars back to independent status. No! Okay. The outrage, I don't see it need to be that big of an outrage for BYU, because I think it's a mark of honor for BYU that Josh Pate would say, you know what, that brand is big enough. They have proven that they can be thriving at the Power 4 adjacent level as an independent. BYU did it for over a decade and showed that they had a viable product. BYU is very eager to get into the Big 12. There's zero doubt about that. And this is totally a hypothetical situation because I don't see conference realignment stratifying the Power 4 into 6, 7, 8 leagues more than I see it actually condensing into 2 or 3 leagues. I think it's more going towards the latter where it's going to condense even further. Point to be made here is, though, that if Josh Pate had his way, if he were the college football commissioner and could wave a wand and make it happen, he would send BYU back to independent status. I see that as a mark of honor in this scenario because he includes Notre Dame because they are just the proudest and they're never going to join a conference fully in football. He also lists the other independents. UConn, so he's calling UConn up to the Power 4 level in this circumstance because of their basketball program, because sure ain't the football program. It's competitive, but it's not a world beater. It also has Northwestern and Vanderbilt. Those are the 5 independent squads in this conference. Well, Jake, what's happening with the Big 12? Well, he has recompromised the Southwest Conference and the Big 8 Conference, and he has put the schools that BYU had associated with in the Big 12 currently in those 2 conferences, along with reconstituting the Pac-10. In the Big 8, he has got BYU's rival, the University of Utah, in there with Kansas, Kansas State, Iowa, Nebraska, Oklahoma State, Missouri, Colorado, and the aforementioned Utes. In this scenario, I believe that BYU would actually do very, very well because, A, if this is going to be how it's going to be, if you're going to have the full 60 whatever teams of the Power 4 currently plus UConn for whatever reason added into the mix, that means the money is going to stay at a pretty high level. And BYU in this circumstance is not giving back a single dime. If this were to come to it, BYU would say, you're paying us what we were being paid, or we're making more than that. And the other thing I love about this is the BYU is an independent in this scenario, could go across any one of these leagues. Now, the Big 8, with them only having 8 teams, I'm sure BYU would have a relationship with those schools in particular to help out with some scheduling circumstances. But the ability to be freed up to schedule whoever you want in this Power 4 world because, as I mentioned, the top or the most that these conferences have are 9 teams. If you're playing a 12-game regular season, well, that frees up at least 3 non-conference games. In theory, you have 1 FCS game for most of these schools. You probably have 1 G5 game and then 1 Power 5 game. And that's where BYU could mix and match and schedule as many teams as they wanted to. And that would get back to the ideal scenario of what BYU envisioned when they went independent. The one thing I loved about the independent era for BYU was the fact they were playing across the country against a number of different teams and had opportunities to compete all over the country and have Cougar fans show up literally coast to coast. In this scenario, because BYU would be in the Power 4, they would still have access to the playoff. There is no way BYU is giving up that access as an independent in this scenario that doesn't give them the access to play for a national championship. That is, in this circumstance, the perfect scenario for BYU. They got to take their huge fan base that lives across the country, play in all these different venues, freak all of these opposing fan bases out that 5, 10, 15, 20,000 BYU fans have shown up there. Well, they're traveling. No, they ain't traveling. They live in your community. They just happen to be members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or affiliate themselves otherwise with BYU via fandom, and they're showing up to these games. This would be a very, very fun scenario in my mind to have BYU living in this alternate universe where they're independent, albeit at the Power 4 level. A, the money is there. B, the access is there. And C, it allows, once again, BYU, they're not locked into playing the same teams every single year, home or away, depending on which year it is. It allows you to schedule across 7 different conferences, literally travel the entire nation, have Cougar Nation along for the ride, and compete for the biggest prizes in college football. I'm all in on this. If Josh Pate were able to make this happen, I would be right there saying, yes, make it happen. Give BYU that opportunity to have the flexibility to schedule whoever they want. They obviously could schedule the fellow independents, play Notre Dame, UConn, but Vanderbilt and Northwestern, I think that would be an intriguing matchup. But the opportunity to play against Utah and have it still mean something, I know it's not in the conference scenario, but the bigger point to be made here is the door is open for BYU to compete for national championships. They still are making plenty of money, and they have the ability to go and play SEC schools. They also have the Big East reconstituted. You're going across the country playing all these incredible teams, playing in some of the biggest venues, those cathedrals, as I call them, of college football. Yeah, in this circumstance, I'm on board with Josh Pate, and I think it would actually be a really, really cool scenario if it were to play out this way. Alas, it's not that way, and BYU is a very proud member of the Big 12 Conference and will be for the foreseeable future. It's reality in this universe. All right, coming up next, we're going to talk BYU recruiting. Now, the 2025 cycle is officially signed, sealed, and delivered. February 5th was yesterday. It was National Signing Day, and BYU added 4 players plus 1 walk-on I think you'll want to keep an eye on. We'll talk about who they are, what they offer to the BYU football program, and why I think this 2025 class sets up BYU to have even more success in 2026. And we'll delve into all that next right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Now, Game Time is here for you guys, get you out the events you want to go to, whether it's a concert, comedy show, sports game, whatever you're into. The best part is Game Time has a brand new feature called Game Time Picks, which makes it as easy as possible, or easy as they possibly can make it for you to get the tickets that you want to go out to the events you want to go to. With Game Time Picks, the app does all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals, so you don't waste time searching through endless ticket listings to find the right options for you guys. The best part is the curated deals make it super simple to find great tickets at a great price. No more sifting through thousands of options. You can obviously grab what they call a super deal with a prime seat. You couldn't believe the value. It's an absolute steal. And the seat view feature is a game changer. You know exactly what to expect in terms of your view at the venue you're headed out to. And the best part is you're covered with Game Time's lowest price guarantee. You find a better deal somewhere else, they'll refund 110% of the difference, more than what you actually paid for. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something comes up. So get ready and get out to your next event and do it with our friends over at Game Time. Download the app today, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's the promo code LOCKEDONCollege when you download the Game Time app for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, and of course, it's all guaranteed. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Hope you all are doing well on this Thursday. BYU's 2025 recruiting cycle has officially come to an end. The year-long process of coaches traveling across the country, trying to get guys to sign with the BYU Cougars, it's all done. 30 newcomers for the BYU football program officially coming by way of transfers from fellow FBS institutions, also guys signing out of high school. And the fun part about this recruiting cycle for BYU is they had a relatively quiet national signing day because the early signing window is more and more at the Power 4 level, the most important one. Now, obviously, there are changes always on the horizon. It feels like in college football, who knows what the future of the national signing day and the early signing window are going to be. That's TBD. But the bigger point you made here is I think BYU is in a very, very good spot and competing favorably. Now, when I say that, a couple of you, because you can't talk lifetime to me, are probably saying, well, Jake, they were ranked 13th out of 16 teams in the Big 12 conference in the ratings. Recruiting ratings are one thing. And trust me, I buy into them to a certain level because I think more and more 24/7 sports on 3 and the other platforms out there, rivals, etc. They're getting better and better with their overall ratings of these individual prospects. But I still believe that BYU can do better, will do better, but at the same time, they can never lose sight of who they are and what they are doing in the recruiting sphere. What do I mean by that? What I mean is that BYU understands that they are a developmental program. Sure, they would love to have more 4 and 5-star talents. And if they continue to pile up 11-2 seasons, those opportunities will come along more and more because more and more young men will say, hey, I'm interested in playing for a winning program. That's what BYU is doing. They're winning, and they're winning on a national level. That being said, BYU has done a phenomenal job under Kalani Sitake. And I say this, any of you who are everydayers are probably sick of me saying this. BYU brings in 3-star talents and gets 4 and 5-star production out of them. Sure, they could bring in a 4-star talent and get more production, obviously, via maybe making them a 5-star production type player. That is obvious. But the circumstances being what they are, a team that's made up the vast majority of it, I'd say 80+% of it, of 3-star prospects, and BYU goes out there and piles up an 11-2 record against the toughest schedule top to bottom that the Brigham Young University football program has ever faced in 2024. That shows what Kalani Sitake and his program, what they're doing, it's working. I can appreciate that fact. And I celebrate what BYU does because I understand that BYU is not for everybody. There are thousands of young men out there who will hear about BYU. It's a religiously affiliated university, requires pretty stringent academics, and obviously the honor code and all that entails are going to turn off certain young men to what BYU is all about. But there are thousands on the other side, thousands of other young men out there who would say, you know what? They're winning. They obviously allow me to focus on football. BYU is very active in the NIL sphere. If you didn't see the story yesterday, it's more in the basketball vein, but it was by Myron Medcalf at ESPN saying that Dan Lillianquist, who's one of the top boosters for BYU in the NIL sphere, is saying, quote, we will not be outbid, unquote. I know that's more in the basketball vein, but what I understand is that BYU, the donor base that is funding a lot of this NIL operation, they have aspirations of funding both BYU football and basketball to win national championships. And if that money is there, BYU is going to be a player for whoever they want to get in the mix for, just because money talks. Simple. I know that NIL is ruining college football for some of you out there. I get it because it takes the idea of amateurism, which I think is a complete farce, period. But it's a professional sport and money talks. There are a lot of young men out there will say, how many dollars can you offer me? And that will entice them to come to your university. And BYU is no different. I also appreciate the fact that BYU, it stands out from the rest of the crowd. Like I said, a religiously affiliated university, very committed to its morals and principles, the honor code, the academics. BYU does its thing, and you either get in line and get with the program, and Kalani's he's not going to sugarcoat it for anybody. He will say, you ride with the program and what we are doing at BYU, or we'll help you find a different spot to go out and play football. BYU does their thing, and they expect you to get in line and roll with them. The nice part is the results are backing up BYU's message. You win football games, young men want to play for you. And BYU finished up their recruiting class with 4 additions yesterday, 2 of them defensive, 2 of them offensive. And all of them, if I recall correctly, are all 3-star talents. So they're not world beaters by any means in terms of the signings today. Yesterday. I'm recording this as if we're playing it today. But the bigger thing is that Jacob Nye, also Jordan Chris, Landon Goff, and then I am McKay Madsen. They are all really, really talented footballers. Now, McKay Madsen, I should back up. He is a bona fide 4-star prospect. BYU beat out the likes of Oregon for that young man. That is a major recruiting win for BYU. So I don't want to overlook that fact. And McKay has been on this podcast and he was awesome. Absolutely phenomenal young man. Those 4 seal up, I think, a very, very strong class for BYU. Landon Goff, he's going to go on a mission, but he looks like Andrew Rich type future star for BYU in the defensive secondary. I think he compares favorably right now to what Tanner Wall is for BYU at free safety. Jordan Chris looks exactly like Trey Alexander was last year. Long, rangy, fast cornerback that's going to need some time to gain some weight and develop a little bit. But if it all plays out, could be a really, really fantastic corner for BYU on defense. McKay Madsen could play 5 or 6 different positions, and he's talked about this on the podcast. He wants to play running back. He's committed as a running back to BYU, and he is huge. And the thing is, he's incredibly strong. 6'2", 235 pounds, state champion in the discus and the shot put in the state of California. Kid's an absolute dog. And Jacob Nye, he adds to what is a really interesting haul of tight ends. Aaron Roderick said it yesterday that the tight ends BYU brought in this class, 3 or 4 of them, they're all more pass receiving tight ends that BYU believes they can teach them to block, and they want the tight end to be a bigger weapon in BYU's offense. And that should be music to many of your ears. Hallelujah. BYU wants the tight ends to be weapons. They weren't actively telling the tight ends, hey, screw you. That just wasn't the case. When the tight ends are good enough at BYU, they will find the ball being thrown their way. And this young core of tight ends coming in, they're going to have that opportunity to prove themselves. The overall message I want to say is that BYU, the continued success they have with regards to winning football, developing players, and more importantly, being active in the NIL sphere, and if they're serious about, quote, not being outbid, unquote, BYU is going to be a force, and that sets them up to have a fantastic 2026 recruiting cycle, which may be the deepest in recent memory in terms of guys who have ties to BYU or the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints as a sponsoring institution. There are guys up and down the recruiting list, if you're looking at it for BYU, in that 2026 class, and there are 5-star talents in the case of a Ryder Lyons at quarterback. There are multiple 4-star talents out there. BYU needs to parlay what they did in 2025, and like I said, the success they have had across the board, into a big 2026 recruiting cycle. And I think if they continue on the track they're on, they very well may just do that, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they can accomplish. Now, the 2026 class has a few guys already committed. One of them committed the day before signing day. That was on a Tuesday. His name is Keneal Sweetwine. He's a local prospect from Skyridge High School in Lehi, Utah. He is a guy that you do not want to overlook in terms of his addition to BYU's recruiting class, because I can tell you, I've watched this kid with my own eyes, and I think he's absolutely phenomenal. And given, I think, some time to develop, could emerge as one of the next handful of quarterbacks that could be difference makers for the BYU Cougars. We'll delve more into what he is and what he brings to BYU, as well as a guy, I meant to mention it here, but I'll mention it next. Another quarterback that's coming to BYU this fall, where Keneal is a year plus out. These 2 quarterbacks could be interesting ones to watch over time, because BYU absolutely loves them, and I'll explain more about why coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Now, Prize Picks is here for you guys to have some fun with the big game this weekend. There's a better way to make it even more exciting with our friends at Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded, Prize Picks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. All you got to do, here's how it works. You pick more or less on at least 2 players' projections, and if you're right, you go up to 1,000 times your cash. Prize Picks game has a free pick for the big game this weekend, where Patrick Mahomes only needs to throw 1 yard, count it, 1 yard to win. Pair that with one more correct pick, and you're cashing out. I think it's about as simple as that, my friend. So get on it today. Whether you believe in a guy in the Super Bowl or anything else with regards to a guy maybe not living up to the moment in the big game, take advantage of it today. And the more important part is when you cash out, that money is in your account in as little as 15 minutes. You're not having to wait a long time for that money. So download the app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup with the friends over at Prize Picks. And as they like to say, you can always run your game. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. If you have not done so already, please join the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. It was my birthday yesterday. I put it out as a give me a birthday gift by joining the group. I'll make it a late birthday gift if you're just tuning in. Join us today. Get the inside scoop on all things BYU sports coming to your phone in the form of a text message. It's a great way to interact with the show, support the show, and more importantly, scratch that insider itch that many of you have with regards to wanting to know what's going on with BYU behind the scenes. So join us today. Link is in the show notes below. The best part is it's $5 a month and you get 2 full weeks, 14 days before you pay anything as a member of the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. So the link is in the show notes below, whether you're watching this on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, and join us today and be an insider with us here on Locked On Cougars. All right, before we go on today's show, BYU garnered the commitment of Keneal Sweetwine from Skyridge High School. Now, Keneal is a 3-star prospect in the 2026 recruiting cycle. Currently has an 85 rating from our friends at 24/7 Sports. Does not have a composite rating, which obviously factors in On3 rivals and other platforms. So that will come in time. But he committed to BYU, and he has got all of the potential in the world. Many of you know that I call high school football games for KSL Sports Rewind during the football season on Friday nights, and I have been out to Skyridge for 2-3 years now. I called McKay Hillstead, who very well could be BYU's next starting quarterback, post Jake Retzloff, will probably be the backup this season. I called his first high school career start. What I love about McKay Hillstead is he is a pint-sized dynamo. He's 5'10", lightning quick, and absolutely can do everything that you want to do as a dual threat quarterback in college football. Keneal Sweetwine, who is a guy that was coming into the program at Skyridge when McKay Hillstead was graduating, he's got the size that McKay Hillstead absolutely would love to have. All of 6'4", 200 plus pounds, and this past season ran for 900 yards plus 10 touchdowns. I know that his touchdown to interception disparity is going to irk some people. It was 19 touchdowns against 16 interceptions last year. That needs to be cut down on. But what I can tell you about Keneal Sweetwine is he has got a pure throwing motion and a big time arm. He's got the ability to drive the ball down the field. And I think if you were to give him better high school receivers, those numbers, like I said, the interception to touchdown ratio probably is a little different. Now, like I said, the decision-making, the accuracy, that needs to be worked on. But I'll add one little caveat here. Keneal Sweetwine is a junior in high school. Like I said, a member of the 2026 class. He's a sophomore in age. What does that mean? Folks, he is a junior in high school, but he's 16 years old right now. He has got essentially anywhere, for most of the guys in the 2026 class, he's got anywhere between 12 to 18 months in terms of being 12 to 18 months younger than most of the other guys in the recruiting class alongside him, particularly at quarterback. Now, that may not make much sense to you, but I can tell you in the college football realm, that is enticing to high school coaches. He's already 6'4". He's already 200 pounds. He's 16 years old, and he's already producing at a fairly high level, and he's young for his age. That is a great combo because that means there is still a lot of physical development to come. There's a lot of mental processing development to come. And there's a lot of time for this kid to grow up, develop, and emerge, I think, as a bona fide potential starter for BYU down the line. Did he short circuit some of his recruiting by committing to BYU early? Maybe so. But I'll tell you, when Keneal Sweetwine, if he does what I think he can do this year for Skyridge in 2025 on the football field, he's going to have other Power 4 programs busting down his door and saying, hey, what will it take for you to flip from BYU? He has got all of the tools: arm, size, athleticism, pure unadulterated speed. He's got everything you want in a future star quarterback for BYU, and BYU's lucky to have him in the fold already. BYU's been on him from the get-go. Aaron Roderick, Matt Mitchell, Kalani Sitake, etc. have been recruiting this kid for quite some time. He's got a very good relationship with the Guilford family. Speaking of Gennaro Guilford, BYU's cornerbacks coach, Gennaro Guilford Jr. goes to high school at Skyridge with Keneal, and they have a family connection there. And this is a big-time pickup for BYU because I think Keneal could emerge as a guy that BYU fans are just raving about down the line. The scenario here is he's going to come into BYU in the 2026 cycle when Jake Retzloff exits the program. That will leave McKay Hillstead, Trayson Bourget, Keneal Sweetwine, and then also Enoch Watson, who's currently serving a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, a quarterback prospect that BYU is very high on a couple of years ago. Those four will essentially make up the next iteration of BYU's quarterback battle in 2026. Who wins that battle? It's anybody's guess at this juncture. I would put my money still on McKay Hillstead with his familiarity and overall ability for BYU. But Keneal Sweetwine will have an opportunity early on in his BYU career to make an impression. And once again, I think every tool you want in a high-level Power 4 quarterback resides in that young man. And the best part is it's in BYU's proverbial backyard, and they got the job done and got him committed early in that 2026 class. One other name to keep an eye on, because he won't be a member of that 2026 battle, but he's coming to BYU this fall, is another guy is a local prospect, now a little further away at Bountiful High School, and Emerson Geilman. Now, Emerson just led the Bountiful Braves to a 5A state title and got criminally under-recruited, it felt like, in so many facets. I had a chance to talk with him at a high school event that we have with KSL Sports Zone. We honor the best Northern Utah players of the week, and he was one of the winners, obviously, with what he did for Bountiful. I remember asking him, hey, what's the recruiting scene for you like? He's like, it's really quiet, Jake. And I was floored by it. He is similar to Keneal Sweetwine, all the size in the world, 6'3", 6'4", very well-built athlete. I would venture to say that Emerson's probably 205-ish pounds, and BYU got him as a preferred walk-on. Now, you're probably saying, well, they're just – no. BYU is excited to have this kid come in, and he's going to come in for a year and then serve a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So he will spend this year as a preferred walk-on redshirt candidate for BYU and then head out on a mission, and obviously will be gone for a couple of years. But BYU is very high on his potential as a developmental guy because he's similar to Keneal Sweetwine, showed athleticism, an underrated arm that maybe threw an interception or two here or there that you're like, okay, we can maybe coach that out of him. But BYU is finding a lot of guys, and the nice part is they're local kids who want to come in and want to represent what BYU is all about. I can tell you that what I know about Geilman and talking with him, that kid's all about ball. He loves football. And I know that sounds cliche to say, but you can do a lot with guys who just simply want to ball out, go play football, and just want to succeed at a high level. Geilman, I would file him away, obviously, for, let's see, that'd be the 2029. It's crazy to think we're back half of the decade here, but he's factoring in probably more down that timeline with regards to his potential to impact BYU. But Aaron Roderick, he's got his detractors out there. We all know that. I'm aware of it. Trust me, I see it all football season long when all y'all wanted him to do this or do that or outright be canned. But regardless, he's doing a really, really fine job trying to find the best talent available. And the good news is BYU is very much still in the mix for five-star talent Rider Lions. Taking Keneal Sweetwine, taking Emerson Geilman will not slow BYU's pursuit of Rider Lions in any way, shape, or form. And if Rider Lions ultimately decides that BYU is where he wants to be, well, they just have added a five-star quarterback to the mix, and that's even better for BYU's future prospects at the quarterback position. So good things are happening for BYU, and they continue to show that they can get it done on the recruiting trail, and hopefully it only picks up from here for BYU. All right, that's going to do it. A big thank you, as always, for your guys' support here on the podcast. Truly does mean the world to me that as many of you enjoy it every single day as you do. But as always, subscribe, rate, review, share it with your family and friends. Help us continue to build this community with Locked On Cougars. And as always, once again, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen today. And thanks again for being an everydayer with us right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.